Levels of selfhood. This is an interesting chapter. As without, so within. If a man mirrors the cosmos, then perhaps each world can be represented in a man. Body, mind, soul, spirit. Not much to say, except the brain is the most highly organized 3 pounds of matter that we know about. That's all I can really say about the body. Mind is troublesome. Mechanists consider mind to be part of body and that the brain is a part of the body. But Smith says the brain breathes mind just as lungs breathe air. In other words, he does not agree with the neurologists who, for some reason, think that if they could see different energies going through neurons, that they understand the mind. In a sense, your mind has to be asserted or intuited from your existence. You really can't demonstrate your mind. You can demonstrate a brain. There is empirical evidence that the mind exists. If you apply electrodes, you can make men remember past events. But there isn't any place, there's no spot, the mind to make men believe or to make them decide. Wilder Penfield said, in his observation, the mind seems to act independently of the brain in the same sense that a programmer acts independently of his computer. Interesting point. The mind has energy, and the form of that energy is different from that of neuronal potentials that travel the axon pathways. In other words, mind isn't the same thing as brain. I kind of intuit that myself. The psychic cannot be fitted into corporeal categories, which are also in the main categories of language. Left brain. Image, myth, and dreams are essential to life. People die when they are permitted to sleep, but are not permitted to dream. Why? We don't know. Rationality. We ration or divide up reality into separate things so we can have discussions about them. Reason is founded in distinctions. It is always groping towards trying to make some whole or more whole picture. Maybe we live in the world without being of the world. Have you heard that before? The fall in the Judeo-Christian Bible, or in the Torah, is equivalent to dividing up reality into separate things. Language, knowledge, ratiocination. Ratiocination is a long way to say thinking. Salvation, certainly an element to all religions, is equivalent to finding a pattern, the whole, maybe the greatest story. The most important message that Smith gives in his book is that we are desperately searching for a pattern. Or maybe, I think, you could say we're searching for wholeness or a story, or maybe holiness. Can matter ever account for sentience? These are questions that we've been asking since the beginning of this book. No convincing materialistic explanation of mind has been made in philosophy so far. You'll have to take that on faith from your teacher. Matter is located in space, but consciousness is refractory to measurement. How tall is that tree in your head, buddy? You understand the problem. When the mind goes in our spatial world, it actually is more ghostly than any ghost. It's invisible. It's intangible. It's a thing not even in outline. It's not a thing. It remains without being a thing forever. Matter, on the other hand, has a clear continuity, gas to liquid, whereas no common substratum linking sentience to matter has ever been proposed. Well, it's not true. We talk about Descartes, but it's a discussion for another day. A substratum linking the material to sentience may exist, depending on the level of reality on which the question is raised, its form, existence, being, or the infinite. But nothing answering to physical categories links the physical categories to those above. Smith's conclusion: mind exceeds mind over matter. Well, I don't know how you feel about your mind, but the feel of mind as we encounter it when we're awake, we're so familiar with it that we overlook the mystery that it parades in broad daylight. It reaches the physical world, but it consists of nothing but a tissue of images conditioned by our senses. I'm looking out into the middle of the woods. That's where I live. I live in the woods in Tennessee. And my eyes are going on. I can see mountains in the distance. But what is it that's doing that? I don't know. The world's logical coherence is a flow of phantasms. The world insists, however, that we're looking at solid reality. If you ever get a chance to study quantum mechanics, please do so. And you will soon learn that what you think you're touching has so little matter in it. What it is energy. It appears solid. It appears solid. The appearance is solid. With mind, we're on a plane where cannot be pinpointed. The sparkle of a mountain stream. The sunset in Zeeland. I took this picture when I was in the Netherlands. What about when we're asleep? Well, mind changes when we sleep. It seems out of sight. Wow, but dreams themselves can be remembered. The mind asleep swims in the psychic sphere of image and symbol. Only upon returning to the mind awake do we ease back into linguistic molds. We are such stuff as dreams are made of. The mind asleep has no measurable place, yet throughout history dreams have led to our noting forces that we seem unable to notice when we're awake. Sample dream. On my last day of high school, this really happened to me, I dreamt I'd forgotten to take all my tests. I couldn't find the classroom, and I had not studied. That anxiety was more real and memorable than my high school graduation ceremony. What's happening? How could such a huge reality, something that is stuck with me through all of these years, be more real than the actual experience as I was walking through it? Does the mind asleep have a lot more power than we usually give it? Dream research has come up with exceptionally concrete evidence to document the fact that in dreams, we are close to the center of life's vitalities. 80% of the time that when men dream, they have erections. So there's some connection between dreaming and waking life. Do we have levels of selfhood? Good question. Ancients called the soul the psyche, or in Latin, anima, cerera atman, nephesh, or nafs. The soul lies beyond the reach of the strongest scientific telescope, and in Smith's opinion, it's closer to our essence by far than is the mind with which we usually identify. Smith sees soul situated behind the senses. It sees through the eyes without being seen. It hears with the ears without itself being heard. It lies deeper than mind. If mind is the stream of consciousness, then soul, in his opinion, is the source of this stream. Soul is the stream's witness, without itself appearing within the stream to be observed. Soul provides a sense by which all this stream of consciousness can be considered our own. It is the final locus of our individuality. No collection of traits constitute me. The traits change, yet I remain myself. To try to get to I is like trying to see my eyes by stepping back a space. While this is a poem from Yeats. While man can still his body keep, Wine or love drug him to sleep. Waking, he thanks the Lord that he has body and its stupidity. But body gone, he sleeps no more, until his intellect grows sure that all is arranged in your view, pursues the thoughts that I pursue, then stands in judgment on his soul, and all work done dismisses all, out of intellect. Okay, so we know soul indirectly by its effects. We sense it indelibly in the incommunicable sense of what it feels like to be oneself instead of anyone else who has ever lived. The soul is invisible. The soul's essential dynamism is that it resembles a bridge more than a destination. That's paraphrasing Nietzsche. Restlessness seems to be built into soul as a principle. The soul seems to have a direction toward what? Ever since man appeared on this planet, he seems to have been searching for an object he could love, to serve and adore wholeheartedly. An object which, being of the highest and most permanent beauty and perfections, would never permit his love for it to dwindle. Heavy sacrifices, yet man persists. The entire history of the race, political, moral, legal, socio-cultural, intellectual, economic, and religious, from earliest times to the present day, is the record of man's search for some beckoning object. What is this object? Freud thought it was connected to sexual release and it was on the physical plane. Adler, the psychologist, he thought it was the drive for power, also on the physical plane. Marx thought it was economic well-being, also on the physical plane. What do you think? Well, Smith thinks that the soul is programmed toward being, towards flourishing life, the increase in being. That's kind of obvious in the case of hunger and sex, wealth, fame, and power. And we can see that right away. But what about friendship, knowledge, beauty, the quickening of the spirit that augments being? In Smith's view, every emptiness we feel is when being is eclipsed. Sorry, I just want to be friends. Even addicts and assassins are reaching out for being, in his opinion. A cocaine's rush, the effects of satisfaction, of revenge. From the lowest levels of reality, where even matter reaches out for form, to the highest heavens, the search of each existent is for more being. In Smith's view, the search for good. What's the object of the soul? Maybe the desire for self-fulfillment, individuation. Maybe that leads us actively toward where this fulfillment will be found. If the soul is infinite, it appears that the soul, as if its fulfillment were to be found in finite things, wealth, fame, power, a loved one. But it gives us a clue that this infiniteness is there, is we invest those objects with infinite worth. How much is your baby worth to you? The lover lays on his beloved infinity and is soon disappointed. But while it lasts, it is near. Then what in the world did I ever see in her? It goes round and round. Plato said we could move up from beautiful objects to the love that within these objects makes them beautiful. That's very abstract for most people, and too abstract for me too, although I really love Plato. Its alternative is to love not the good, but God. Well, we have to be careful not to create images of God, to turn God into our kind of knowledge, our mode of love. Smith says even if we have to see through the tinted glass of our finite human discernment, God is nonetheless there. And if an in ways humanized image serves as a bridge to a region beyond the limitations under which all images have, in his opinion, so be it. Note the prevalence of phrases in our age, the death of God, the eclipse of God. Smith wonders if our constant barrage of inanimate and mechanical has allowed us to forget that above the smog the stars still shine. Isn't it possible that deep isn't because the depths have changed? Is it possible that we have just forgotten truth? He writes, I remember the night where my soul opened out into the infinite, and there was a rushing together out of the two worlds. It was deep calling unto deep. I stood alone with him who had me. Happiness. Happiness is an experience. My favorite phrase is, happiness is what happens. I have been told repeatedly that I'm one of the happiest people anybody's ever met. I didn't know that. It's just, I didn't do anything to deserve it that I know of. It just happens. It is said that happiness has no history, and history recounts wars and plagues and famine. But the religious experience seems to go on as a private interior drama that doesn't reach the pages of history until sudden impact. St. Paul on the road to Damascus, Luther's sudden comprehension of those whom the interior drama has been tapped. They can lie down on nettles, lie down with vipers, scarcely notice where they are. The world is just an end, fair to being. The Avars of India said, when will the time come when I shall see him without intermission? Spirit is the element in man that is identical with God, celestial plane, but with God's. That's Smith's. In his opinion, spirit is the aspect of man that is Buddha nature. The Sufis say, I am the absolute truth. You may recall, I am who am. At this final stratum, there's a transcendence of the separation that we usually feel anything. Spirit does not render omnipotent, but removes his impotence. Complicated statement. We can discuss that in the questions. The spirit remains free as the sovereign who imposed the decree of the limitations of the body and soul. Statement also worth discussing. The infinite defies positive characterization. There are no titles, not man or woman, young or old, rich or poor. The Ramakrishna says, suddenly the Blessed Mother revealed herself. The buildings with their different parts, the temple and everything else vanished, and in their stead I saw a limitless, infinite, effulgent ocean of consciousness. What was happening in this world, I do not know. But within me, there was... Quotation later. How do you get to the spirit? Well, through history, according to Smith. Once personal identity is established, the issue shifts to what that identity is to be attached to. The boy realizes he's never going to be 7 again. With the exception of supernatural moments when reality breaks through the carapace of time, lightening and reveals the landscape in which we are infinite, every human being has a myopic identification with a less than total self. The addict identifies with his drug. As Buddha said, one must find right understanding for spirit to permeate the self's entirety. The components of the self must be aligned, body and temperance, mind and the soul,